They tore the Bastille down to set people free, but deep beneath the rubble they found a cell no one built, holding something no one ever spoke of. No door, no records, just claw marks, and a single word scratched into stone. Forgive me. Who, or what, was buried alive in the most feared prison in France? And why does no one dare to talk about it now? Most people know the Bastille as a symbol of the French Revolution, a towering prison in the heart of Paris, stormed by an angry mob on July 14th, 1789. They tore it down brick by brick, celebrating freedom and the end of a monarchy that silenced people without trial. But what if I told you? Not everything that was found inside made it into the history books, because during the demolition of the Bastille, workers discovered something strange. A room, hidden deep beneath the lowest level. No door, no stairs, no window. Just stone, thick, silent, suffocating stone. And inside, a single rusted chain bolted to the floor, a bowl of untouched food, and scratched into the wall. One single word. Pardonnez. Forgive me. No records listed this cell. No prisoner was ever documented as being held there. No one was supposed to be inside. So the question is, who or what was buried in the Bastille? And why did they want us to forget? Before it became the symbol of revolution, the Bastille was something else entirely. It was fear, made of stone. Built in the 14th century as a military fortress, it slowly transformed into something darker, a state prison used not just to hold criminals, but to silence them. You didn't need a trial to be locked away here. You didn't even need a name. Just a letter from the king, a lettre de cachet, and you could vanish. Forever. Nobles, political enemies, writers, lovers, servants, all sent behind those thick stone walls where the light barely reached and the outside world forgot your face. Some prisoners had books, some had nothing. Some were chained to the walls, and some were never seen again. They say the walls of the Bastille were too thick to hear screams, but not thick enough to block out the sound of chains dragging across cold stone. Guards told stories of hearing knocks from empty cells. And when someone died, no ceremony, no notice, just a shallow grave, or in some cases, a bricked-over room. To the public, the Bastille was just a prison. But to those who were taken, and to those who worked inside, it was something far worse. It was a place designed to erase people. And the deeper you were kept, the less chance you had of ever coming back. We've all heard about the man in the iron mask, a mysterious prisoner hidden away for decades, face covered, identity unknown. But what if I told you he wasn't the only secret the Bastille kept? During the storming of the Bastille, revolutionaries demanded the names of every prisoner inside. Records were checked, chains unlocked. Some prisoners walked out to cheers. But there was one name, or rather, one absence, that never sat right. Deep within the foundations, a group of workers stumbled upon an unusual cell sealed behind brick, one that didn't match any of the architectural plans. Inside was no prisoner, just signs someone had been there recently. A chain worn down at the cuff, a bowl of untouched food, rotted, but not ancient. A wooden stool, broken like someone had stood on it and tried to hang themselves, only for the beam above to snap. And scratched deep into the stone wall, a date, just a few weeks before the storming. The man, or whatever he was, had died shortly before help arrived. But here's the disturbing part. There is no mention of this cell in the official reports, no mention of who was kept there, no guard logs, no royal orders. It's as if someone had been buried alive, and history tried to erase even the burial. The man in the iron mask? He had royal attention, speculation, records. This prisoner? He had nothing, no mask, no name, no mercy. And if the cell hadn't been broken open by accident, we would have never known he existed at all. Maybe that's what someone wanted. But the real question is, why? When the Bastille fell, people expected to find the horrors of monarchy exposed, torture chambers, cruel devices, dark secrets. But what they actually found was quieter, stranger. There were rooms that didn't exist on any blueprint, tiny spaces hidden between walls, too narrow for a bed, too dark for a window. Some were bricked over, others were accessible only through crumbling tunnels or staircases that led nowhere. Inside, workers discover things that didn't belong. A stack of children's shoes in a room that showed no sign of a door, a metal cup still full of water that hadn't evaporated, and in one sealed cell, a feather quill scratching endlessly across parchment. Only there was no hand holding it, and no ink left in the pot. One chamber had no furniture at all, just a circle of blackened stone scorched into the floor. The air there felt colder, like it had never seen light. Men reported hearing voices in rooms long emptied. Some claimed they saw shadows pacing behind walls that weren't there the day before. A few ran, refusing to return, insisting they'd heard breathing just inches behind them, in a space that couldn't physically exist. One account tells of a worker who began to speak in a language no one understood, eyes wide, hands trembling, and then collapsed, never waking up again. None of this made it into the official reports. Too unbelievable, too disruptive. But whispers of these finds survived in the journals of laborers, in the side notes of revolutionaries, in letters never meant to be shared. Whatever was buried in the Bastille, it wasn't just prisoners. It was something older, something the bricks tried to hold back, something that, for centuries, had been whispering through the walls, just loud enough for the forgotten to hear. Among the rubble of the Bastille, one object stood out, a small leather-bound journal said to belong to Bernard-René de Launay, the last governor of the prison. He was executed by the mob hours after the fall, but his personal effects were seized first, including this diary. Most of it reads like you'd expect: dates, complaints, political names, delivery lists, comments on troublesome prisoners. But then, toward the final pages, the handwriting changes. It becomes uneven, rushed, frantic. Whole paragraphs are crossed out. Others simply stop mid-sentence, like he was interrupted. There are mentions of the deep cell and the one I cannot name. No prisoner number, no description. Just one chilling phrase that appears more than once. Still alive, still listening. A later entry refers to a guest who dreams without sleep, followed by this line: I fear he is not ours to hold, but neither can we let him leave. Some pages were ripped out entirely, and one page, near the end, is scorched black, as if burned from the center outward. Historians debated whether the diary was tampered with, or if it was even real at all. But what unsettles many is a final half-page, almost overlooked, where Delaunay writes, If they come for the Bastille, let them take it. But not the last cell, not what waits below. Even the king feared him, and the king fears nothing. After that, there's nothing. No signature, no final thoughts, just silence. The diary abruptly ends. No records ever explained what the last cell was, or who or what was kept there. And as the revolution took hold, any trace of the prisoner vanished from public history. It's as if even the man in charge was afraid to write down the truth. Even after the Bastille was reduced to rubble, its presence never truly disappeared. In fact, Some say the hauntings only began once the stones were moved. Pieces of the Bastille were reused throughout Paris, in bridges, foundations, private homes. And that's when the stories started. People reported hearing low moans echoing from walls that shouldn't make sound. One woman, who lived above old Bastille stonework, swore she heard someone weeping under her floor every night at the same time, 3:17 a.m. On more than one occasion, pedestrians walking near Place de la Bastille, the square where the prison once stood, claimed to feel cold drafts of air in the middle of summer, or pressure on their chest as if someone unseen was trying to push them down. A few said they saw bars, metal prison bars, briefly flicker into view where there was nothing but open air. But perhaps the most disturbing account came in 1961, when workers digging to extend a nearby metro line broke into a sealed void beneath the surface. Air was no chamber listed in any city blueprint, just a space lined with Bastille-era stone, and inside, claw marks. Dozens of them, human in shape, but far too deep and far too high up to be made by someone without tools. The chamber was quickly closed, and no official record was ever released to the public. Paranormal investigators who studied the area claimed the energy there was heavier than anywhere else in Paris, and some described an overwhelming sense of being watched, not by a ghost, but by something that had never been human. Tour guides don't mention it, locals don't talk about it, but the air still changes when you pass the old Bastille site. Cold, still, unnatural, as if something that was buried is still awake. When the facts end, the theories begin, and the question still haunts every corner of this story. Who or what was buried in that hidden cell beneath the Bastille? Some believe it was a political prisoner too dangerous to name, a royal relative perhaps, or someone with knowledge that could shatter the monarchy, a man who knew secrets worth killing for. Others think it was a member of the king's inner circle who betrayed the crown and was silenced not by execution, but by a fate worse than death, isolation, abandonment, and erasure from all memory. But the more chilling theories suggest the prisoner wasn't entirely human. One whispered idea points to a cursed individual, someone twisted by forces the church couldn't explain and the crown couldn't contain. A heretic, a prophet, a vessel. There are parallels in old records, stories of prisoners who didn't age, who didn't sleep, who spoke in voices not their own. Could this man have been one of them? One occult scholar even claimed the prisoner might have been a royal experiment, a product of ancient alchemy or forbidden rites, hidden away when things went too far. And then, there's the most terrifying theory of all, that there was no man at all, that the cell wasn't built to hold a person, but to contain something else entirely, something not from our world, a presence that fed on isolation, that whispered into the minds of the guards, and that waited, patiently, for the Bastille to fall. Maybe the revolution didn't set us free. Maybe, just maybe, it opened a door. And if that prisoner was never meant to be found, what exactly did we unleash the moment we tore those bricks away? So much of the Bastille is gone now. Broken stone, shattered walls, dust scattered through the streets of modern Paris. Tourists walk the plaza where it once stood, snapping photos, sipping coffee, unaware of what was once beneath their feet. The past, they think, is dead. But history doesn't always stay buried, and silence doesn't always mean peace. That hidden cell, the one without records, without doors, without air, was never meant to be found. Not by the revolutionaries, not by the workers, not by us. And yet, it was. The prisoner inside may have died long before they reached him. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe what was buried down there couldn't truly die. The diary warned us, the voices, the shadows, the sealed chamber clawed from within. They all tell the same story. Someone, or something, was locked away for a reason. And the moment we opened that space, even by accident, we made a terrible trade. We traded ignorance for curiosity, safety for knowledge, the kind of knowledge that lingers, that watches, that waits. Because if there really was a prisoner who listened through stone, who whispered through walls, who fed on silence, then maybe he isn't gone at all. Maybe he was never meant to leave that cell. But now, piece by piece, he's finding his way back into the world. Through dreams, through voices, through stories like this. And maybe, just maybe, he's listening now, waiting for the next stone to crack, the next secret to surface, the next person to speak his name, the name we were never supposed to know. The Bastille fell, but what it held may still be with us, hidden in the foundations of a city, echoing in silence. And that was just one story. One cell in one building, long since torn down. But how many more are out there? How many walls still hide voices we were never meant to hear? Maybe history didn't forget them. Maybe it buried them on purpose. Which makes you wonder, what else have we mistaken for legend? If this is what slipped through the cracks at the Bastille, what might be waiting beneath your own city? Your own basement? Your own dreams? The past has a funny way of echoing. Sometimes it starts with a whisper and ends in silence. But silence doesn't mean safety. It just means you haven't heard what's coming yet. If this story kept you thinking, or unsettled you just enough to double-check your locked doors tonight, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this, strange, forgotten, and still unsolved, just waiting to be unearthed. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and never ignore what lies beneath. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.